want to welcome all of you. I hope that each of you is safe in this difficult time and doing as well as possible. And I want first to thank all of you for your past and current support of the Bard Music Festival and of the orchestra now, Tone. And we had hoped this spring to have a gala in the normal way in which Tone musicians would perform and we would celebrate the achievements of the Bard Music Festival and especially the coming season of the Bard Music Festival, the 31st, I think, of our festivals, which is going to be devoted to the life and work and times of Nadia Boulanger, the great French musician of the 20th century. Because of the current crisis, we can't do this gala in person, so we're sending you this virtual gala sample of the forthcoming festival and of the work of Tone. Nadia Boulanger was a brilliant young musician, and she won 2 second prizes in 2 attempts to win the prestigious Prix de Rome, and she was not awarded the first prize in large part because she was a woman. And many of the judges, all of the men, didn't think that composing, was a career for a woman. And she was determined, and she entered twice, and the work she produced was brilliant. But the prejudice was extreme, and particularly on the part of Camille Saint-Saëns, the French composer. The irony of history was that her sister, who actually probably was her half-sister, they had different fathers, Lily Boulanger, her younger sister, who was truly a genius and was able, after Nadia had failed, to be the first woman to win the Prix de Rome, which she did. Tragically, shortly thereafter, at the age of 24, she died. But the music that Lily Boulanger wrote is uniformly eye-opening, ear-opening, and startling. And Nadia Boulanger, after her sister's death, devoted a great deal of her life to preserving and fostering the legacy of her sister's music. Nadia Boulanger may have come to the conclusion that her sister had a gift that she didn't, and was deterred from continuing to compose. She turned her attention to performing and to teaching. And in the 1920s, she founded a school in Fontainebleau, which was primarily targeted at Americans who, after the First World War, no longer went to Germany to study to become composers. Before the First World War, American aspiring composers tended to go to Berlin, to Leipzig, to Vienna. But the German language and the German cultural tradition became suddenly and rapidly out of fashion with America's entrance into the war in 1917. So suddenly, Paris and France emerged in the post-war period as a destination point for Americans. Nadia Boulanger became a teacher in the summer school in Fontainebleau, and among the first of her pupils was Aaron Copland. And Copland's experience was so good that it led to a whole unbelievable list of Americans who came to Paris to study with her. Roy Harris, Roger Sessions, Elliott Carter, Louise Talma, and Europeans and English students, and she developed a fantastic reputation as a teacher of musicianship and composition. She also, in her career between the wars, she became very close to Igor Stravinsky. And in fact, in the École Normale, where she got a position as a professor, she taught jointly with Stravinsky in matters of composition and she became an editor and collaborator together with Stravinsky. In 1940, Nadia Boulanger was forced to emigrate, or rather she came to the conclusion that it was right for her to emigrate to the United States. And in the 40s, she taught at the Longy School of Music, which is now part of Bard, which was a small, and remains a small conservatory with a very strong French influence. After her years of Longy, she returned to Paris when the war was over and reestablished her reputation as the great teacher of music. And during those years, she had pupils, students who ranged from Quincy Jones and George Walker and Julia Perry and Philip Glass and Grażyna Bacewicz, the great Polish composer. And she finally died in the late 70s at a very venerable age. So in the 20s, she began to write some music criticism, but she then turned her attention to organizing concerts in salons and public concerts. And they were very unusual concerts because she led in the revival of a repertoire that was unfamiliar. Her concerts featured not only modern music, contemporary music, but also music from a different past than the one most concert goers were familiar with. She also made a historical recording of the vocal works of Monteverdi and put that repertoire back on the map. She was a fantastic organist, and she had an organ actually in her own home. And she not only played regularly in church in Paris, but she also turned her attention to conducting. And she was the woman who broke the barrier for her gender on the podium. And she conducted in England. She was the first woman to conduct the Boston Symphony Orchestra. She conducted all over the United States. I have to confess that as a young teenager, I actually heard her conduct the New York Philharmonic, and on a program that included probably her favorite orchestral piece of music, choral piece of music, which was the Fauré Requiem. She conducted her sister's music for chorus and orchestra, and a piece by one of her pupils, Virgil Thompson, the great American composer and a writer on music. Her ideal of music was a very neoclassical, if you will, historically grounded idea of the shape of music. She was interested in the arc of a composition, how it within itself gave the listener a sense of a line, of a form, of balance. She was a believer in the invariant criteria of musical beauty, that it was no matter whether it was atonal music or whether it was tonal music or whether it was romantic style music or classical sounding music, the style was not important to her. Neither was the material, which is why she was very encouraging of Americans like Copland and Roy Harris. It was not important what the musical style was. It was important that every composer had fingerprints of their own, that a composer had a distinct voice.